Okay, so our big question for today is, can I multiply and divide numbers by 10, 100 and 1,000, giving answers up to 3 decimal places? So the first thing we're going to look at doing is multiplying a decimal by 10, 100 and 1,000. So the first thing I'd like you to do is identify which decimal is being represented in this place value grid. So we should have got that we have got 4.502. I can see this decimal's got 4 ones, 5 tenths, no hundreds and 2 thousandths. So if we're going to look at multiplying this decimal by 10, I need to move it 1 space to the left. So that means my 4 ones will become 4 tens, my 5 tenths will become 5 ones, and my 1,000th will become 100th. So we can see that 4.501 times 10 is 45.01. Now if I'm multiplying it by 100, I need to move it 2 spaces. So my ones will now become hundreds, my tenths will now become tens, and my thousandths will now become tenths. So I know that 4.501 multiplied by 100 is 450.1. So how many spaces to the left do you think I need to move it if I'm multiplying by 1,000? So we should have identified that we now need to move it 3 spaces to the left, which means that 4.501 times 1,000 would be 4,501. So we're going to have a go at another one together. Again, the first thing I'd like you to do is identify the decimal that is being represented on this place value grid. So pause the video now and write down the decimal that you can see. So we should have identified the decimal being represented is 0.086. Okay, so I can see that there are no ones, no tenths, 800ths and 6,000ths. Now if I'm multiplying by 10, how many spaces to the left do I need to move each of my counters? So we should have identified that it was 1 space. So our 800ths now become 8 tenths and our 6,000ths now become 600ths. So 0.086 times 10 is 0.86. I'd now like you to pause the video and have a go at multiplying our decimal by 100 and 1,000. Think about how many spaces to the left you need to move that decimal. So we should have written down that 0.086 times 100 is 8.6 and 0.086 times 1,000 is 86. We're now going to have a look at some function machines. So you'll see that we've got 4 different decimals here. What we've got to do is we've got to multiply each of these decimals by 100 to work out what the output would be. So if I'm thinking about 0.37 times 100, I know that I need to move this decimal 2 spaces to the left. So if I was to move it 1 space, I would have 3.7. My 3 tenths now become 3 ones, and my 700ths now become 3 tenths. If I was to then move this again, I would have 37.0. My 3 ones have become 3 tens, and my 7 tenths have become 7 ones. So I know that 0.37 times 100 is 37. I'd like you to pause the video and have a go at 2.68, 19.005 and 10.04 times 100. So we did the first one together. We should have got that 2.68 times 100 is 268. 19.005 times 100 is 1,900.5, and 10.04 times 100 is 1,004. Okay, so there are 6 different statements on the board here, and I would like you to identify whether they are true or false. We'll have a look at the first one together. So it says here 0.8 times 10 equals 80. Now I know if I'm multiplying by 10, I need to move my decimal 1 place to the left. So if I'm looking at 0.8 and I need to move my 8 1 place to the left, I no longer have 8 tenths, I now have 8 ones. So 0.8 times 10 equals 80 would be false. What would I have had to multiply 0.8 by to get the answer 80? Can you have a think about that for me? I'd now like you to pause the video and have a go at the other 5 statements for me. Are they true? Are they false? Can you explain why? So we've identified that the first one was false. You should have got 7.3 times 100 is 730 was true. Statement 3 was true. Statement 4 was false. Statement 5 was false. And statement 6 was false. So we've looked at multiplying by 10, 100 and 1,000. We're now going to look at dividing by 10, 100 and 1,000. So if we have a look at our place value grid here again, we can see that I've got the number 3,502. And I want to look at dividing that by 10, 100 and 1,000. So before, we were moving our digits 1 place to the left when we were multiplying by 10. When we're dividing, we're going to move them 1 place to the right. So 3,502 divided by 10. So my 2 ones now become 2 tenths. Okay, I had nothing in my tens column, which means I have nothing in my ones column. My 500s now become 5 tens, and my 3,000s now become 300s. So I can see that 3,502 divided by 10 is 350.2. If I was to look at dividing it by 100, I would need to move each of these digits 2 places to the right, which would give me the answer 35.02. And by 1,000, 3 places to the right, which would give me an answer of 3.502. So we're going to have a look at another one together. So first of all, I'd like you to write down which number is being represented on this place value grid. So we should have written down that the number 804 is being represented on our place value grid. So if we look at dividing by 10 to begin with, we know that we've got to move each of these digits 1 place to the right. So my 4 ones becomes 4 tenths, my 0 tens becomes 0 ones, and my 800s become 8 tens. So I know that it's 80.4. If I'm looking at dividing it by 100, okay, my 4 ones become 4 hundredths, my 0 tens become 0 tenths, and my 800ths become 8 ones. So can you have a go at 804 divided by 1,000? Remember, you would need to move it 3 places to the right. So we should have found that 804 divided by 1,000 is 0.804. And finally, we're going to have a look at another input machine. This time we're practicing dividing by 1,000. So let's have a look at the first one together. So if I've got 58, and I need to divide it by 1,000. That means that I need to move each of my digits 3 places to the right. So in the number 58, we have 5 tens and 8 ones. Okay? What you then to think about, your decimal point would be here. You'd have your tenths, your hundredths and your thousandths. So I'm going to move my 8 first of all. I'm going to write it again down here. So if I was to move my 8 3 places, 1 would be to the tenths column, 1 would be to the hundredths and 1 would be to the thousandths. So I know that my 8 ones have now become 8 thousandths. If I was to move my 5, one place would be to the ones, another to the tenths, and another to the hundredths. So I now know that my 5 tens have become 5 hundredths, which means I can use my placeholders, and I can see that 58 divided by 1,000 would be 0.058. Okay, can you pause the video and have a go at 829 divided by 1,000, 12,009 and 2,007? We should have got that 829 divided by 1,000 is 0.829, 12,009 divided by 1,000 is 12.009, and 2,007 divided by 100 is 2.007. Okay, we're not going to do that one. On the blog, you will see that you have got your own activity linked to multiplying and dividing by 10, 100 and 1,000 to complete. If you have any questions, you can contact me using my email address on the Year 6 class page.